Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Quiz the Music Man. And I'm Tony Underwood. I'm the Music Man. You can find this podcast on all of the podcast available platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere good podcasts are found. I also do a video recording as well that I put on YouTube and other places. And I answer questions about music, the music industry, learning music. I've been a musician and music educator for many, many years, worked in a lot of different areas, and currently own and operate a music school in Central Florida and a dance studio as well. And I write and record and market my own music that you can find on all the platforms out there. So today we are going to kind of do a second part of a podcast I did a couple of weeks ago. And that podcast was called Why Record Deals Suck. And this one is Why Record Deals Don't Suck. There's been a lot of talk about record contracts and things. And I think it really got kicked off by a lot of artists out there, but really the latest and probably one of the biggest is Kanye West, who actually put his contract out on the interwebs where people could see it, and did some other things and said his record company stole his records and are stealing his masters and so forth. Now Taylor Swift had another issue with her former record label about her masters, and we're going to talk about what a master is and why they're worried about it, and so forth. So let me begin by just talking a little bit about contracts. And for those of you that are watching this on video, I'm wearing glasses, which I haven't done in 20 years. I wear contacts and probably more than 20 years, since high school really, which is a long time. I haven't worn glasses out in public. I have these glasses that I wear just around the house. The couple hours I might take my contacts out right before I go to bed. And I keep them handy in case I have to get up at night. And they're pretty bad. I haven't had the prescriptions changed in years, so they're really awful bad. But the reason is I got an infection in one of my eyelids and it blew up, and I didn't really feel comfortable putting a contact in there. And then the medicine is an ointment. It's got like a Vaseline base, and you actually have to put that inside your eyelid as well as the outside, and so my eye gets coated. I can't see, so I don't want to put a contact in there. So anyway, a lot of time I took up on nothing, but just so you know why I'm doing this. And you'll probably see me take these off to see, because I see really well up close. So if I'm reading something up close or looking at something, I take these off. And anyway, let's talk first about contracts. And so I'm not an attorney or a legal advisor or anything. I'm nothing. I'm absolutely zero when it comes to this. I'm just repeating things I heard and trying to facilitate you going and learning about this stuff. That's what I want you to do. I want you to go and learn about this stuff. There is a book called Everything You've Ever Wanted to Know About the Music Business, or something like that. Google it. This guy, he's an attorney. I don't know how well he was in the music business, but he is an attorney, and he kind of goes through music contracts. I want to talk a little bit about just a contract. What is a contract? A contract is an agreement between two parties that don't really trust each other. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to have a contract. They always used to say, oh yeah, he's a great guy, he just does a handshake. Well, usually it's someone who has a lot of money, and he does a handshake for one simple reason: because there's no way for you to sue him to make him do something. And he doesn't really need you because he's got a lot of money. He can replace you instantly. That's what you have to understand. Now, this is not a knock against people who have a lot of money. I think it's great. We all do that to some extent. We go to Target or to Walmart or to Amazon because we have that money and we're going to make our choice. Well, that's the same. The more money you get, the choices move up. You might go looking for the least expensive attorney out there because you don't have a lot of money. But when you have a lot of money, you're going to get a big attorney. And just the fact of that name, if they write a letter to somebody, people won't sue them. Whereas if you have an attorney nobody knows about, or the other attorney knows that other attorney's got a huge office and makes millions and millions of dollars, and he knows that other attorney's just starting out, he might not be inclined to worry about him. Now, he might still lose. I'm not saying attorneys are only good if they're expensive, but if you have a lot of resources, it's a little bit easier for you. So a contract is an agreement in writing by, usually in writing, it doesn't have to be, by two people who don't really trust each other. That's as opposed to a covenant. In the olden days, marriage was a covenant. A covenant is an agreement between two people who trust each other. It's a pledge. I love this person, pledge this. But now, marriages are contractual. They're taken over by the government. And that's what people don't realize when they talk about marriage and like biblical marriage. Biblical marriage or marriage in history was not a contract. It was a covenant. And it was only bound by the mores of people. In other words, what they thought. And, you would be ostracized if you went against the covenant, but couldn't necessarily go after you in the court of law. Now there's an actual contract of marriage, and there are laws governing marriage. And if you sign any prenup or agreement, there's even more. But so the fact that you're thinking about signing a contract means you don't trust that other person, and you shouldn't. And every eventuality should be written. And it's not written in language you can usually understand. There's a reason for that. Because if I say, hey, I'm going to sell this to you for $10, well, what does sell really mean? Does sell imply I own it? Does sell imply that it's going to work? Does sell imply that I think it's an equal exchange, so if you don't like it, I'll just give it back to you and you give me the money? What does sell mean? Well, common sense. Common sense is great. The problem is most people's thinking is not common. People aren't on the same level. You've heard of the term semantics. Most arguments boil down to semantics. They say, well, it's just semantics. But that's the most important part, which is the details of what individual things mean, what it means. And I can prove that to you. I'll read something, I'll just say something to you. That is, that is not, is not. Does that make a lot of sense? Not really. But if I say it this way, that is. That is not, is not. Is that it? It is. Now that's just punctuation. That was from a movie called Charlie, I think is the movie. Anyway, old movie, the olden times. Older than me, so it's old. But that shows you that, plain language is not plain. So legalese is used because legalese is accepted, and there's books and books of law and judgments and things handed down of what we know what means. So that's why we have legalese. You should know about contracts because life is full of contracts. A lot of people have gotten in trouble with student loans. Well, it was right in the contract. Some student loans, they have no relief. You make the loan, you pay it. If you can't, they can't really do much. Some, they can send people out and arrest you. They can garnish your wages. They can destroy your life. Now, I'm not saying they're mean people. That's what the contract says. I was in real estate for many years, and people would get foreclosed on. And people say, oh, you're one of those guys that foreclosed on. I had a printer, had a print shop. Said, oh, what are you buying houses from people that were down on their luck and got rid of their houses and just like a vulture picking? And I said, no, I buy houses from people who are about to be put in jail because they can't pay the money or have a big judgment placed against them, which would destroy their lives. And I agree to buy that house, and I'm taking a big risk because I might not make any money off it. In fact, I might lose $100,000 or $200,000 on it. And I looked at him. I said, "Now, aren't you a print man? Let me ask you, if I go in and order $50,000 worth of printing for my business, and then I come back to pick it up and say, well, listen, I've run into some hard times. Do you mind if I just pay you half? I'll pay you the rest later." I said, "I don't know any print companies that do that. Do you?" You know, so it's one thing to, from the other side, look at what's going on, but you sign the contract. If you can't make the payments, they take the house. I'm not making a moral judgment or whether it's right or not, but that's what the contract says. And if you sign a contract, you should be well aware of what the risks are in a contract. I'm not an expert in contracts, but what I do with every contract, and this is from, you know, getting cable, buying a TV on, making payments, buying something from Amazon, Apple updates, Android updates, you know, it's just long. Well, take some time and glance at it. When I sign a contract to purchase something, depending, you know, on how much money it is, the more money, the more time I spend, I'll actually sit down with a contract, and you can get a book or Google it or whatever, and I go paragraph by paragraph or sentence by sentence. And let me look at, I've got a couple of these contracts here I want to look at. Let's see where I put them. I think I put them in. I'm going to take these glasses up so I can see a little bit. Oh, I was right there too. Look at that. It's in the beginning. There we are. This is Kanye West's contract that he put on. He signed it in 2012 with Island Def Jam Music Group and Kanye West and Getting Out of Our Dreams Incorporated. It's 114 pages, but look at some of these numbers in here. Whereas pursuant to the film agreement, IDJ has already paid $1 million, and they're going to pay $3.2 million, and there's another $1.5 million. Yeah, these are big numbers, so I'd go over line by line. I'd look at this for 3 weeks if I needed to or more and get some attorneys to do that. And the first thing is, you know, gentlemen, the agreement between Island Def Jam Music Group, a division of UMG Recordings, parentheses IDJ, as successor in interest to Rockefeller Records LLC, and Kanye West as successor in interest to Rock the World LLC. So what does that mean? Well, the first people, they're telling exactly who they are, what companies they're with, if one company has succeeded to another, who the parties are. Dated, and it's called the label agreement, certain agreement entered, and whereas pursuant to the film agreement, IDJ has paid to the production company the IDJ investment and has since contributed an additional $1 million toward production. So they're starting to name out, this is some pretty big numbers. So that's why this is 114 pages. So I would spend whatever time I needed. Now here is a little artist agreement, and this is what's called a 360 deal. So what happened, we'll get into a little bit more later, but a 360 deal is where they make it sound like it's, oh, we're taking care of you. Yeah, they're taking care of you. They're getting money from everything you do. Engagement, term and option, advances, and I know it's complicated, and you might never fully understand it, but you can have it broken down into the simplest terms. You can actually, what I do is I take my contract and it'll say, the following shall constitute an agreement dated blank between blank and blank. I say, date of contract, I write it, I say, parties, me, I put my name, in parentheses what it's going to be called all the way through the contract. Other people, boom, 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 anyone else. Company hereby engages artists to render exclusive entertainment service, and artists agree such engagement agrees to render such service exclusively in the territory to company during the term of this agreement. So I say during today to 2025, everything I do is theirs, period. I don't have nothing. On and on. Term and option advances, they're going to pay, I get X amount, $5,000, $50, 500,000, 5 million, whatever that is. Advance, what does it mean I'm getting an advance? What is an advance? Well, that just means they give you money, but they can take some of it back for their expenses. Recoupment. Recoupment is a big word in the music industry. It means all the things that they pay out. So, you should get into these contracts, like for your house, for your car. Take some time and read it. Ask for a copy. I'd like a copy of that contract, a blank one, and go over it. That way, when you get there, make your notes. You can say, is it the same contract? I was sent a blank copy. This is filled in. Make sure you know what everything means. I was getting a car once, and they have the right to, if they don't like what they see, within like 2 weeks they can recall the note, which was I bought a loan for the car. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. I said, why don't we just wait for you to figure out and get the information you need? Well, Mr. Underwood, it takes us a while to find this out. I said, okay, well, how long? A week? Well, I'll see you in a week. And they ended up changing it and not having that, because I didn't want that. I wouldn't. If they're not willing, they're the professionals. They should know this. If they aren't willing to make that risk, I'm not willing to take the risk. Because to me, somebody who doesn't know his business enough to say, well, I got to look at this for weeks and weeks, they're the professionals. I might want to look at it for a week or two, but they shouldn't have to. It's their contract. So I've had contracts signing non-competes. When in your business, you would be very careful. Don't do that. Make sure it's limited to a time you're okay with. Make sure it's limited to an area you're okay with. Make sure I was in a situation where I left because some of the people involved were addicted to certain substances, and they were my supervisors, and that's not the kind of person I am. Somebody come in under the influence and supervise me, that's not going to happen. And I had a big non-compete, and company was like, well, it's ironclad. And I went down and said, listen, this was nowhere in the contract. I've got to be supervised by somebody who is under the influence of controlled substances. I won't say what. I said, and what's more, you know about it, because there was a lawsuit about it years before. And so they released me immediately, wrote a letter. I said, I want a letter saying that you're releasing me from everything. And I'm just going to get a regular job somewhere. I'm not going to take any of your information, which they didn't have any information that I didn't know anyway. But, be careful with your contracts. Don't sign a non-compete for 10 years and within a radius of 200 miles. Well, you don't want to move. Look at that contract. You're buying a refrigerator. I mean, a lot of these people, you buy stuff and they have a warranty, but they'll say, you have no recourse against us. Well, maybe it was damaged and they knew about it. Maybe the box has a big ding in it and they hit it and the refrigerator goes. And then the company comes out and he says, well, you dropped this thing and we're not going to cover it. Same thing with your car, anything. Read your contracts. Take some time to read them and have somebody explain it to you. Go to your community college or to your nearby college, to the law department, and ask if there's maybe somebody who's just passed the bar, or a teacher or a teaching assistant who may be getting their master's degree that knows about contract law, and have them sit down and go over it with you. That's the least you can do. The most would be to get someone who's good at contract law. So let's go. That's a contract, and you need to I don't know about contracts. I'm an idiot, but I'm sure going to find out as much as I can. And I think you should do that as well. So let's move on to record deals. What is a record deal? They don't call it that anymore. A record, well, you guys know what a record is now. For a while, nobody did. It's that little disc of plastic with grooves on it, and you put it in that thing with the little needle, and it plays music. They were gone for a while. They're coming back. So they called them labels, music labels, music industry, music label deal. So what happened is, back in the olden days, somebody would be a great musician and somebody would sign a contract, have them sign a contract to make music. And they'd get all this money. And they'd say, well, I'm rich now, because lots of people are poor. They didn't have anything at all. And let me tell you, poor back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, I'm talking, I said that before, a family of 10, they all wore the same dress up until age 5. Yeah, dress. Boy or girl, didn't matter. Your shoes, fix it up, wear it out. No, use it up, wear it out, fix it up, or do without. That's the old Pilgrim's way. Make shoes out of whatever. They would make clothing out of feed bags and flour bags, and they went through a lot of big bags, 10, 20-pound bags of flour. They went through a lot of them because they made a lot of bread, because it was all handmade bread. That's all you had. You ate a lot of that. So they would sign them to a record deal and give them, maybe a couple $100, a couple thousand, which back then was like you getting a check for 150, 300, 400, $1 million. You got some good money there. And the problem is, in the contract, it was recoupable. So that means that any expense, the company could take that money back. You could end up owing them money, and usually you did. And then in the contract, it says, in case you end up owing me money, we'll apply that to the second advance and album. Now, they would give you more money, but then they'd use it up too and over, and you'd have to pay expenses like traveling expenses, have to pay for your own hotels, for the food for the band, a lot of things, the record. Now the big thing, and a lot of good artists get this, featuring. That's not featuring. That's you got screwed. Now, a collaboration against an artist that's way up there, yeah. I make my little music and try to market it. If, Ray LaMontagne or even a bigger artist like Ed Sheeran or something wanted to do a song with me, you bet I'd jump at it. I got nothing to lose. I wouldn't even want money. I'd say, just put my name there and let me walk on stage and play it with you. I don't want a dime. But what they do now is, you'll see these songs, it's, 10 or 12 writers. Well, what they'll do is they'll have artists or people come in, and they want to, instead of paying them money, they'll put them in, and instead of saying they're, say they are, and then they get a little writing credit, a point, 20%, 10%, 1%. Pretty soon, you got nothing, left. And the recoupment, you don't know what they're paying a producer. Maybe they have to pay him 50 grand. Well, maybe they'll save 75, or they'll come back and they'll decide to remix it for a different venue or whatever, or all this stuff. And, you're losing out on all this. So, that's the problem. Now, you look at these, now why do record deals suck? Because you can end up not having any money. If you want to look at what I would call a normal artist, somebody who's not super big, look up Krayshawn. It's a girl she did the song Gucci about 10 years ago. She hit it big. They gave her, she's done a lot of YouTube interviews about it, so go watch them. She got $350,000, and she had like 200 in her bank account at the time, and that hit, and she thought she was living large, but she started having to pay all the expenses. And it ended up, and then you don't get the streams. They give you 10% of your streams. Well, 1 million streams on Spotify is around anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000, depending on how you're set up in your aggregator, if you do it yourself. Now, if they give you 10% of that, you might make 700. So the guy that did Happy Pharrell, he had all those streamed for that song, and he said he made like $4,200 on it. And he really should have maybe made 420,000, or I don't know, 4 million maybe, who knows. Could have been a lot of money. Drake streams, 50, 60 million a month on one song. That's some coin. That's 250 grand a month. And a song that big will stay on there for a year. It's got an arc or more, 2 years, 3 years. God's Plan's probably still streaming like crazy. Now, he's the top, but even somebody who has on Spotify a couple million people, monthly listeners, well, they'll listen to a song 10 times a month and listen more to one song. So you're doing pretty good if you're independent. So a lot of people have just been like Kanye. They're like, well, I'm just going to have to do records for life. I'll never pay this off. And then you don't get what's called the master. Now, when you write a song, you get that publishing part. Now, there's another part, the same amount. So they call it 100%, 100%. It's really 50-50, but 100% publishing is the master. The master is the actual recording. If I write a song, you can go to and look how the time goes by. I wrote it. I have, assign that I wrote that. Anybody that sings that song on their own, I get a cut of that because I wrote it. I don't get the cut of if they make a recording of it. That's their part. Now, they have to pay me what's called mechanicals, but still. Me, if I do a recording, that's the master. So if you go to write your songs and ABC Records produces it, makes the recording, that's the master recording, that actual recording. That's what they keep. They don't give it back to you. So that's why in your contract you should have a reversion clause that says after so many years you get it back, or you get part of it back. And let's be honest, they pay a lot of money for it to you. So let them, if it comes back and reverts to you, give them 10% of it or whatever until a certain amount's paid. That's what Taylor Swift wanted. It's 10 years later, she wants her masters. Well, they're not going to give it to her because that was the deal. Now, I don't know if it's legal. I wish somebody would tell me, but you could go off and leave from there and go to your own studio and pay your own people and record it again at the same time, because the thing is, well, 10 years later you're going to sound different, the flavor's gone. But if you go and do your own, I don't know if that's something. Now, a lot of them have exclusive, which means you can't record anything else. So that's the other thing you got to watch. But that's the issue, and that's why record deals suck. That's what I talked about. Well, how come they don't suck? Well, look at Kanye's. They're throwing around $6 million and making a movie for $1 million. They're paying for $1 million movie. And he's not 10 years old. He's an adult. You telling me he can't go to an attorney? But a lot of people get a record deal and they get nothing. There's a band called Council. They're very good. They had a record deal. They had a song that was on the Olympics and everything. They got dropped because despite the record company, they have all the contacts and they have the get you on TV and do all this. Sometimes it just don't work out. And it's not because you're not good. It just doesn't work out. So they probably put $500,000. They're never going to recoup that off of them. I don't know if they come after you. You'd have to read the contract. You got to make sure they can't. But that's kind of that. I'm going to take a look here. Let me look at this video. Make sure what's going on here. I think this is a regular thing. So, yeah. So that's just something you have to, boy, my head's real shiny in that's for sure. That's stuff you have to look for. So, having said that, if you're an unknown and you've been struggling for years and haven't really made money at music and you get offered a contract, you might want to think about taking it. Now, what you can do is build yourself up with a following, get to where you've got, 5,000 to 6,000 people following you, 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, have people that follow you doing Facebook Lives and things because people aren't performing right now, have merchandise that you're selling. Then you've got some leverage. Then you can say, well, I want my master's back in 5 years and I want more than 10% of Spotify, or you get 10% and I want to know exactly how much you're going to charge for all these recoupables, or have them taken out, no recoupables. You don't give me the money. I mean, because at that point you're not going to need a big influx of cash. Make them give you 100,000, no strings attached. They pay for the recording, and let them take the lion's share until an X amount is paid back. So say until $1 million is paid back, you get to take 80% of the streaming and this and that. If you don't want them to have all your 360 deals, don't let them have it. Don't let them have part of the touring. Say, no, you guys do this, I'll do touring on my own. Go get you a sponsor and tour yourself. But you have some leverage, or if you're bigger and have had a contract maybe and it's time. Because see, in the olden times, it was kind of a given, your first deal is usually for like 5 years and 2 or 3 albums. And you were a slave to them, and you worked for them basically. But then after that, if you did really well, your contract's coming to an end. Well, then it's different. Then you get one of the Michael Jackson contracts or something like that, where he just killed him, made him come to the table. Prince is, he had a big deal about the artist formerly known as Prince because of his record deal. But he eventually made out, and they made up with him because that's how they knew they could make a lot of money off of him. And he knew that he could make a lot more with him because, listen, 100% of $50 is $50. 10% of $5 million is $500,000. So that's a big difference. But you have to watch and see what the contract says. How much is recoupable? What is it? Now, the other thing that you don't think about is expenses. You see, if you get to take expenses, it comes off of your income. That's less money you have to pay taxes on. Because people don't realize that a lot of these companies don't pay taxes, but that's because they've been in business to do that, and they know how to do that. And there are laws you can use. But for most people, you get 500,000, $1 million. Well, you owe half of it in taxes. And then, you're not set up to shelter that to where you can do all these legal things where you don't have to pay taxes. And plus, you still got to do other things. Like you can buy real estate, but you have to have the money to buy it, to put down on it, to manage it, have that all set up. Now, there are people that can do that, but they're doing it for themselves. They're doing it for people that make hundreds of millions of dollars a year. They're going to charge you if you're just making 500,000 or $1 million, or you're going to have to educate yourself. And there are ways to do that. So while you're sitting around, eating your French fries and putting stuff out on Spotify and SoundCloud, get a book on tax law. Welcome to the real world. Let me tell you, successful musicians are business people. Any artist needs to learn how to monetize, and it's okay if you don't know, if you don't like it, if you're not good at it. You don't have to be good at it. Listen, I once knew an attorney that was the best typist. People don't type anymore. Everything used to be typed up on a typewriter. There were no printers. You would just type it up one at a time, or have what they call carbon paper, and you would type it up and it would be 2 or 3 copies. And that was a skill. And 60 words a minute was like, you're good. I knew an attorney, man, this person could type 120 words a minute, never make a mistake, whiz, bang, boom. So should that person type all the time? No, they never typed, because they made much more money as an attorney, and they weren't as good as an attorney as they were a typist. In other words, they were probably middle to above attorney, average attorney. They were the top typist. There probably was nobody, maybe 1% were as good as her or better. Attorneys, maybe the top 20%, which isn't bad, and money makers, she didn't earn that much money. She earned probably as much as half of the attorneys did. So it's not how good you are. So educate yourself. Get some books, take some classes, talk to some people. YouTube, man. YouTube, hit the interwebs, figure this out. Educate yourself about contracts, because you can use a contract to your advantage. Have the recoupables defined, can't exceed X. Make sure the money you get's a sliding scale. They want to start at 10, that's fine. After they've made 100,000, it goes to 20. Another 100,000, it goes to 50. Then it goes to 80 and ends up. They want a 360 deal. Say, well, what do you bring? How are you adding value to my merch sales? How are you going to increase my merch sales? Say, well, I'll tell you what, if you can do what you say, if you increase my merch sales by 50%, you can get 5% of my merch sales or something. Same way with touring. Well, what are you bringing to touring? If you can get a sponsor, I wouldn't do Miller Lite or something like that, but if you can get a sponsor, Gibson guitars or Yamaha instruments or something, to put up X amount of dollars for the tour and pay for this and pay for that and pay for this, I'll split it with you. I'll bring my people in and do a live recording of the events, and then I'll produce both a music and video about it, and I'll give you 20%. You let me produce it. I'll do the production costs. All these things. But you have to understand what's going on, and the only way to do that is to sit down with that contract line by line to see, because there are no bad contracts or good contracts. There are just people who didn't educate themselves. And excuse me for burping. I really apologize for that. I had some peanut butter on a banana, and man, if that'll get you burping. So I'm trying not to, but I couldn't quite do it there. So I apologize. But, I'm no brilliant attorney, and I don't know what's going on, but I sure will find one. Now, let me speak briefly on an attorney, because a lot of people, the record company, the music, we got an attorney we'll recommend. Well, no. You go get you an attorney and you ask them both up front and in writing, do you have any connection with the music company or anybody involved in that music company or anybody else that does business with that music company? And you make them tell you no to your face, and then you get it in writing when you email them or send them a letter and say, I appreciate you being the attorney for this, and I just want to reiterate that, I'm coming to the table, everything's above board, I've been completely honest with you, and as we said and you agreed and answered that you have no relationship with anybody there or with anybody else, and you're working exclusively for me, you don't represent anybody else, and you won't change that. And if they can't do that, get you another attorney. It's like I said, you have a problem, talk to your people and work it out. And if you can't work it out, or if they don't believe in you, then go get you some new people. And this is when you should do that with attorneys and managers and everybody else. And always meet with people. Don't sign things on the dot. Don't meet with people alone if you can help it. Because you always want somebody else there for you. If you find a problem, if you start making money and find a problem, do not meet with anybody one-on-one. Don't meet at your house. If they show up and want to talk about it, say, no, not really. I'm not comfortable doing that, or I'm sick. I'm not going to do that right now, or I've got something going on. Don't even let them in the door. I mean, you don't want, I want to think the best of people, but when money's involved, everything goes out the window. And I want you to listen to something. You don't have any friends when money starts. And let me tell you why. Let's say you write a song with a friend and you guys agree to split 50-50. Well, unless you have a split sheet or you've got something in writing, you've got nothing. Here's why. That person, Joe, let's say it's Joe, your friend forever, and he would never do anything against you. That may be true. And he might never hurt you, but you know what? Who could hurt you? One of Joe's relatives or one of Joe's business partners. Joe could die, and then he might end up, you don't know, being married, and she's going to come and sue you for 90% of that because Joe told her that he wrote that song and he just gave you 10% because you're a nice guy. Any of that. I mean, some of these stuff you have to be careful. When you hire somebody to work on your house, make sure they have insurance, make sure everything's written in the contract. And I always tell them that you're only authorizing them or their authorized people, whoever's covered under their insurance, that if they bring someone in, even if you allow it, if they bring someone else in to look at this or whatever, it's all their responsibility. You're not responsible for those people. And I always go and get a notice of commencement if somebody's going to work on my house. That's a whole nother can of worms. You can look that up, a notice of commencement. But those are the things you need to educate yourself and do it now. Don't wait. If you're 16 or 14 and you're all excited and you're making money maybe with music, educate yourself about these terms, because let me tell you, the world and the streets are paved with people who made millions of dollars one year and then lost it all the next and had nothing the rest of their life. They lived like tramps or died or got so disillusioned that they ended up dying way early or doing themselves in, or someone else did them in. A lot of lottery winners end up in cement driveways. Suddenly people like you. Anytime somebody suddenly likes you, something ain't right. Make your friends now before you get money. LeBron James, I don't necessarily agree with all of his attitudes towards stuff, as far as, when he didn't shake hands with people and things like that. But he hired his friends and did everything himself, and I admire him so much for that. And now, of course, he's standing up for what he believes. I admire him for that too. But be like LeBron. Don't let new people come in. And if they do, you got to do your due diligence. Vet them. Know. Don't think. Know. Know who you're talking to. Who's this attorney? Who's this manager? Who's this road crew? Who's this writer? Don't let people in on what you're doing. People show up at your house unexpectedly by themselves, or a couple of them show up. You don't have to talk to them. Don't let them in. If everybody's got such a great deal and everything, they can go do it themselves. Guy was telling me once how this scheme he had, if I got into it, I'd make more money than I ever needed. And I looked at him and I said, well, I don't have a lot of money. I said, but I've got more than I ever need because I live within my means. He looked at me crazy. He said, well, you can buy a Mercedes-Benz. I said, well, show me your Mercedes. He just laughed at us. And when he left, he didn't want me to walk outside. He said, oh, no, I don't want to bother you. I'm going to leave right now. And I got thinking, I said, no, that's okay. I go out. He was driving a little bitty $1,000 car. And I said, this is your car. This is the car that, you're making so much of this money and stuff that you're going to have me make it, and I'm going to drive this kind of car. And I don't judge people in the car they drive, but if they're telling me how this scheme they've got is going to let me buy all these Mercedes, Lamborghinis, and everything, and they don't have one, something's not right. So do your due diligence always. Regular people too. These days you can get on the interwebs and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and all this and see who people are, who their friends are, and talk to some people and figure them out, get references, and go talk to the references and kind of vet the references. Who is this person? Is this a real person? I've had people try to come into the music school and they have references and all this stuff, and I call up a reference and the lady's like, what? They never did any of that, So do your due diligence and make sure you understand Learn about contracts. Get some books. Read up. Don't get to where you're so excited or so wanting money that you'll give up of something that's worth much more. Kanye didn't think his stuff was worth anything, or he thought it was worth whatever the millions of dollars he was getting, but it's not. Now he gets there and he's like, oh, they're making $500 million off this, and I made, whatever, 3 million, 5 million, 6 million. So make sure project it out. And I would tell a record company now, don't give me any advance. Give me $50,000 just free and clear, no strings attached. You just pay it. And I'll give you 90% of everything that's earned until it makes up whatever that advance was going to be. Because, see, they wouldn't give you an advance. Why would they give you an advance? It wouldn't cover the music. So they're going to give me $500,000. Well, give me 50, and I'll give you almost all the profits, 90% of the income, until that 450 is paid back to you. Then we're going to change 50-50. And then after you made $10 million, we're going to go to, I'm going to make 80 and you're going to make 20, or I'm going to make 90. And in 5 years, the stuff reverts back. So they'll laugh at your face unless, you've got 50,000 followers, 100,000, a million. Some people have 12 million. You're making streams. You're doing 20 million streams a month. So you're making, $100,000 a month, $150,000 a month. You're selling merch. You're selling 50,000 worth of merch. Now you're not selling out venues, but you're selling out venues. You're doing your Facebook Lives and making your money. You got a Patreon account. People are plugging money into that. YouTube is monetizing you and you're making money. Well, then they might offer you $10 million in exchange for whatever. So, and say, well, $10 million and we're going to keep the rest and use it to make the recording. You get the you get the masters, the records back after 5 years, 10 years. You can give that to your family. These days, things stay on YouTube forever. And maybe you can do your own YouTube channel. Say, you don't get my YouTube monetization. I'm going to do that myself. You don't get Instagram. You don't get any of that. A lot of places want your fan club. Yeah, you can't even do a fan club. Well, that means when you leave the record deal, they keep your fans. You don't want that. You want that yourself. It's like Facebook and all. Make sure you're getting people's email. Or use Superphone. Superphone was where you text. The guy that did Superphone, he's an independent artist, a rapper, and he makes millions of dollars a year, and a lot of people never heard of him. He had a record deal and he left, and he started doing it independent, and he created a thing called Superphone, which it's text management like email management. So he just has people text him, his fans, and then he can coordinate it all like their email and text, hundreds of thousands of people at a time if he wants. Superphone, it's called. Google it. Look it up. Bing it. Nobody uses Bing, do they? I think a lot of people do. Used to be Ask Jeeves, you could do that, or use what they call a web crawler. It's back in the olden times. So this has been a long one, so let me wrap it up. Why record deals don't suck? Because they can be a way for you to become a superstar. And look at all the superstars pretty much up until 10 years ago. Every one of them had a record deal or a music label deal. I keep saying records are back, but a music label deal, big labels. And a lot of them didn't. I mean, I think it is, who is it? One of the big bands from the 70s kept all their masters. Ray Charles made a new big deal, I think, with wherever he went to in the 60s, Columbia. He kept his masters. So you can do it. You just have to have some leverage. You have to be somebody. So build up your stuff. Look online. Go to places like rickbarker.com. He was Taylor Swift's first manager. Rick Barker, Adam Ivy. Who else is good? It's on YouTube called Burstimo. The Brand Man, he's on YouTube. Who else? I mean, if you want to sell to TV and movies, Michael Elsner, Master Music Licensing. He's on, you can search him up. So there's a lot of places you can do. Educate yourself on contracts, educate yourself on taxes, on insurance. You need to have an insurance policy. Insurance is for poor people, but then rich people use it to get richer and richer. And in fact, at one time, Walmart made more money on insurance policies than they did off their businesses. That's crazy. They used to take out what's called a janitor policy. They took out insurance policies on a lot of their workers. At that time, you could take out a policy on somebody with them not knowing about it. And really, if you're in business, it's for you to make sure you're risk averse. They would take out life insurance policies, and the premiums were very small because people went to work there when they were young. And then 10, 20, 30, even 40 years later, whatever, they passed on. Well, they'd get $1 million. And after having paid, such small premiums over time, then the payoffs were big, 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 and they were making a lot of money. So you have to have some good insurance. Have you some life insurance? Make sure your car insurance is up to date. You got good medical insurance, and parse that. Go through each line and make sure you've got things going. And do your research. Don't just get the cheapest, but don't pay out more than you need to. And look up insurance. There's whole life, there's term, there's some insurance you get all your money back. Some of it you can borrow off of. People think, oh, well, that's a fool's mortgage. Well, yeah, it is, but if you don't have any money, it's not bad. It's an ability and an ability to sell it back to people later. But all those things, that stuff you need to learn. You can get insurance to cover if you make any mistakes in your contracts. So look at these things, get the contracts, and do it when you're young. When you're young, I know you're excited and you want to do this. Well, I am too. I'm still excited. I love doing this, but look at people. Don't just go off and do crazy things where you're not taking care of business. Do your crazy stuff, but take care of business too. Learn about contracts. Learn about record deals. Learn about how to find a good attorney. Get you a good attorney, a young attorney that you know, and you can even help develop. Maybe they just started out themselves, or they're in with a big firm, or they're in law school, and you're making music, and you get to know them, and they're good friends, and they're going to go into music law or contract law, or they're musicians that become attorneys, and help them out and learn about these things about working with other musicians. Learn about split sheets and about who gets what if something happens. And if you don't know, go to a music attorney. And these people I mentioned, they have music attorneys that they talk to sometimes, and you can go and find that information out, or sit down with one, or sit down with a book, or look it up online. And it's drudgery, but putting in the work is how you're going to get there as a musician. And the more you know, that's leverage. Always be willing to walk away, even from millions and millions of dollars. There was an artist, oh my gosh, he became a huge star in Vegas. I'll think of his name at some point. But he was offered $1 million back in maybe the 60s or something, a record label deal. And he looked at the person and said, no, I know I'm worth, or he was offered a huge amount of money. And he thought about it and said, I appreciate it, but I think I'm worth this, and I'm going to go out and do that. And he went out and did it. Now, they eventually made another offer, a huge offer, and he took it. But he went out and worked and played and sang and did his thing. So keep working. Go out there and get you some of this life. And take a look at Kanye's contract. You can go pull it up and look. Go parse it. Take a few weeks. Do it every once in a while. Do it an hour here, hour there. Get sample music record deals. YouTube these people. Krayshawn, you can find out. And a lot of other people that talk about it. And you can get some information and stick with it. Don't just listen to 3 YouTubes. I mean, I'll start learning. I'm going to want to learn to make beats on the machine, they call it. And I used to do it a long time ago when they first had those out, but I haven't done it lately. And so I started listening to YouTube. They didn't make any sense. I couldn't figure nothing out. but you listen to them over time and months and somebody else and again and again and again, and now it's starting to make some sense. So it'd be the same way with contracts and stuff like that. You just keep working at it. And get you some of this life, because it's only your life. You got a problem, talk about it. Go talk about it to the people in your circle, in your family, in your friends, your relatives, maybe at your house of worship, or somebody you trust, a teacher, and talk to more than one person about it and let them all know what's going on. Because if they can't help you, if they don't think it's a problem, then you just find you some new people. Somebody will think it's a problem, and by talking about it, you take its power away from you, because you start to get a little more close to it and realize that it's not something that's going to chain you down. Go to therapy. Just talk about it. Go to people. Let them know, and listen to what they have to say. Don't just go get a bunch of options and pick the one you want. Listen to what these people have to say. Go online. Listen to these record people that lost, and listen to people who got a legitimate contract and then never went anywhere. What did they do wrong? What did the record company do wrong? Don't give up. That's who fails, the people who give up. Success is a bunch of failures. I used to tell people, go out and make some mistakes, because heck, if you don't make mistakes, you don't know what's going on. So go do that. Get yourself educated. Learn about these record deals. Get you some of this life. Be what you want to be. I have faith in you. I know you can do it. And if you can't, if your goal is to get on the other side of the mountain, you don't have to fly over it. You don't have to walk over it. You can walk around it. You can tunnel through it. You can go to another mountain. You can skydive. You can take a plane. See, all these things. Your goal's still there. Just change the way you're doing it. So this is the Music Man. This has been a long one, almost an hour, but there's a lot of stuff in here. And we're going to talk some more about this stuff. I'm going to give some, facilitate some of this. I'll get some information up for you, and we can facilitate this a little bit. So I'm Tony Underwood. Go on to Spotify and find me. There's a tuba player, and that's not me. But heck, listen to his music too. You can listen to more than one kind. I'm all over Apple Music. I've got a YouTube channel with a lot of stuff. I have some my vlogs on there as well, and go to my podcast and listen to some of them, and send me questions. Let me know what's going on in your life. I want to know. I live vicariously for you folks. Be safe. Do what you got to do. All right? That's the definition of a real man. He does what it takes to get the job done, and the definition of a real woman. Because, especially if you've got a partner, and I don't care how it works out, what kind of partners, I think it's all good. If you can find love in this life, that's good. But if you're letting somebody do something wrong, you're letting them down. You let them know it's wrong and talk about it. And if they don't agree and go off on their own, well, then maybe you need to get out of that and go do something else. So think about that too. So this is Tony Underwood, and read those contracts and get to know them. And that's why record deals don't suck. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.